Welcome to the October 8th, 2013 work session of Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the reading of our mission statement. Kelly Baumgartner.
The Richmond Community Schools mission is to graduate students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college career ready.
Thank you. And Dixie Robinson's going to read our vision statement.
By 2020, Richmond Community Schools will be the highest performing school system in East Central Indiana.
Thank you. And now we are ready for reports, discussion topics.
The first report's a brief summary of a grant that is being applied for. It's for math and science. You remember we've had a science partnership grant. We're talking about a $650,000 grant. This is a grant that recognizes the good work our teachers have done. Apparently, we are the only ones who are being asked to submit an application for that. And that's based on the level of commitment to our science initiative. And this simply enhances that grant project. And this is primarily through Purdue University, and it's also staff development. It's professional development. This does not fund a position. It's almost exclusively for materials and professional development over the next 3 years. So it recognizes the good work.
Is that for elementary only, or?
I believe it is.
It's K-6.
K6.
So it'd be intermediate.
Okay, great.
We should also, I should note that Lori Fields, and it does look like we have Matt Hazakoster here listed, Amy Lou, Sam Thomas, and Sarah Hazakoster, but Lori especially has really worked to coordinate this science initiative that we've had the last couple of years that has given us such attention from Purdue University and State Department. So it's because of that commitment we're in this position now. So we will let you know where that ends up.
Great. Sounds like a wonderful opportunity for many. Dixie?
Last year, those teachers presented at the board. Would it be possible to have them come back and?
That may be in the works. Mark Millis is working with them, and I can't answer that specifically, but he may already be one step ahead of me on that, and I'm not sure where that is.
That was exciting.
We'll ask him.
Because it was very interesting.
Our next report has to do with immunizations, and Barb Bergdahl has some information for us.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Boroff. At your seat this evening, you have information that we're in the immunization period of school at this time, and we have an exclusion date of October the 23rd for grades 2 to 12. If students have not completed all their immunizations at that time, they would be excluded. So we have, thanks to Bridget Hazelbaker, she's done a great job. We actually stole this slogan or logo from Texas, so we don't think we'll get in trouble. We borrowed it. Sorry, we borrowed it. So this is, it's on the website, and we appreciate all her work that she's done. But be wise and immunize. We thought that this was kind of a short and sweet message to our parents, and what we want to make sure is that all of our students are protected, make sure that they have all their immunizations that they need and required by the school, by the state of Indiana. So also at your seat you have what the requirements are. We have that in Spanish and also in English, and this is kind of what's on the website also, this part right here. So we have till the 23rd. The 23rd is the last Wednesday before fall break. If the students have all of their records turned in, or if they bring in an appointment card that says they have an appointment to get their immunizations, they will be allowed to stay that day at school. If not, we have fall break come Monday morning. They will not be allowed to enter unless they have some information of completion.
Do you have any idea, Mrs. Bergdahl, as to how many students?
We do have, the elementaries seem to do really well at this time. Our intermediate buildings are around 100, around 99 and 96, and of course around 100 so at the high school. So we're really encouraging the students. The nurses have sent letters, second and third letters, reminding parents. The principals I know have been working very hard at the intermediate buildings, calling and contacting parents themselves. We do see a little repeat from our 5th graders who maybe didn't get all their immunizations last year, are now 6th graders, so we really need to, we're concentrating on those 6th graders to get the records completed.
And do the parents, are they, I'm assuming that they are helped with where they can go to
Right,
get
we have-
their immunization?
Our nurses have all the resources that can help them, also with assistance if they need that. So we're just trying to make sure that we're making that verbal contact with them, because we know the letters always don't arrive in the right places. So they're actually making those phone calls and contacting the parents there. So we're just, it's really for protection for their child and also for our other children who are in the building.
Absolutely. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we are ready for action items.
The first action item is to acknowledge what we've done to move a board meeting from one night to the next. This board meeting takes the place of tomorrow night's scheduled board meeting. We have had to publish for the public, and especially for publication in the media, our annual schedule of board meetings. What I'm asking you to do tonight is to revise that schedule as it exists from now to the end of the year with tomorrow night's meeting off the schedule. Same schedule with the exclusion of tomorrow night, because tonight's meeting takes the place.
Okay, do I have a motion? Kelly Baumgartner makes the motion, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
We will make sure that's publicized. Our annual financial goals, Mr. Coddington. Mr. Coddington. Annual financial goals.
You're not retired yet.
He was distracted by me.
This time of year, every year, we come with annual financial goals, but Indiana Code have it right here.
21-10-3-4.
21-10-3-4. This is part of the 65% solution. I'm proud to say that Richmond Community Schools' annual goals, they've been modified a bit, but with 67.1% of all revenues for the 2011 fiscal year going to academic achievement or instruction support, we shall continue to maintain these percentages by balancing the general fund budget for 2014, reducing non-classroom personnel as needed, achieving appropriate general fund student to classroom teacher ratios, adding only additional classified staff to meet student needs as defined by the superintendent, and continue to reduce general administrative costs through co-op purchases and competitive price quotes. Therefore, we ask that the School Board of Trustees approve the 2014 annual financial goals as presented.
Motion made by Jeff Slifer.
Second.
Seconded by Suzanne Darengowski. Comments or questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
I'd like to go ahead with the next one, Bob.
We've been notified by the Department of Local Government Finance that Budget Form 4 that was used was not the correct form. Please, the attached, and I wrote about this in the weekly update, that there's no change in numbers, there's no change in rates, there's no change in appropriation. It's a form change. They've informed us that we need board approval and for me to resubmit the form. Therefore, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the technical correction of Budget Form 4 as presented.
Okay, I need a motion. Motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
And our school safety grant.
Yes, before you, I've submitted a school safety grant to the Department of Homeland Security. A copy of this grant application is attached. The amount requested by Richmond Community Schools is $50,000. We ask that the Board of Trustees approve the IDHA school safety grant request as presented.
Okay, I need a motion. Motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Kelly Baumgartner. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay. At ease, Mr. Coddington.
At ease. He's in
All
the
right.
military now.
Our next item is the corporation-sponsored travel proposal from Dennis Intermediate School. And we had a couple questions at the last meeting, so what I'm suggesting that we do tonight is, before we actually recommend for approval, you go ahead and ask those questions. We have Mr. Morey from Dennis. If you'd like to come on up.
Hi. Good evening.
One of the questions they had to do with the number of students you plan to serve and what kind of assurances do the students have that if they're really wanting to go, they can go despite issues of cost.
Sure. Well, before I answer that question, I wanted to amend something. I just met with teachers from Hibbard and Test Today who are willing to take on the task that is overseeing the DC trip. So we're going to be able to offer it to every 8th grader in the district.
That's a major.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of relief on my side because now I don't have to push as hard to scrabble enough together to get to the next lower pay scale to get everybody there. So that's a relief for me in some ways. And I think it's a great opportunity for all the kids in the district. So then the question is, what are we doing to make sure that all of the kids in the district have the opportunity then, correct? So we offer a pretty wide range of fundraising opportunities. So when we have our meeting, we'll have our meeting a week from Thursday, the kind of the introductory informational meeting. And we're going to have it at Dennis, but again, the flyer will go out to all students, so parents and any student and their parents can come to that informational meeting. We'll kick off 2 fundraisers right off the bat. We always do the Elder Beerman Community Days coupons because we get 100% of what they earn there. So Elder Beerman gives out the coupons, and everyone you sell for $5, you keep $5 of that. So that's a good one right off the bat. And then we do the butter braids. They're frozen deals that you cook, and they're really fattening, and I can't stop eating them. Hopefully, none of you can stop eating them as well. If you want your orders, let me know. I'll send kids to you. They are really popular. I will say I coach cross country in the fall, so I have a hard time getting all my ducks in a row for this trip, for that introductory meeting. And last year, we were about this time, we were already getting calls from people in the community going, are you going to sell butter braids? So there's somebody out there that likes them. So those are the two that we do immediately. We try to follow with. I've been trying to move towards things that are more local and that are going to give us a greater return on how much they spend. So we do the warm glow candles. Kind of in November, and a lot of that is dependent on, because it's just me, a lot of that is dependent on parent participation, how many parents are willing to volunteer. And I kind of, at that introductory meeting, we talk about lots of opportunities, and then they fill out a little form that says, these are ones that I'd be interested in helping with, volunteering with, and we kind of base it off of what we get from there. So we typically will do the warm glow candles. We'll typically do kind of a discount card. We have gone away from a company that did that and kind of just found, actually one of our families that has kids going through the schools runs one of the local print places, and they said, we could print those cards for you. So instead of selling them for 10 and getting 5, we now sell them for 10 and get 8. So those are the big 3 that we do right off, kind of, and then the rest kind of come as parent involvement and volunteering comes along. So other ones would be Wix Pies. Just talked with our the middle school athletic director at Dennis, and we're working on getting students and parents plugged in to do the concessions at all of our athletics events as well. So the opportunity, so for example, we had a kid last year, for the first time we've actually had to come up with some policies for how much you can fundraise, because we had a kid actually fundraise, because we tell them, you can fundraise if you do well enough, if you get out there and you hit people up, you can actually make enough to have spending money too. And we had a kid that fundraised enough spending money to pay for an actual second trip. So we had to come up with some limitations for how much we're going to allow with it. That was one of those things that we never thought we'd have to worry about. So any kid that's willing to go out there and rattle cages, I think, has ample opportunity. We also offer sort of individual ones where the kids can sell. We'll order in candy bars. I've got a number of parents that work at factories that'll say, yeah, give us another box of those 50 candy bars, and they'll go into the break room and within 2 days have sold 50 candy bars and got another, they get 50 cents a bar for that. So there are lots of opportunities that are available for kids that want to do it. What's interesting is a lot of kids say, I'm sold. I don't see a lot of effort. I'll go to the lunchroom and ask just a random survey of the 8 people I'm eating lunch with. Anybody ask you to buy a butter braid yet? I haven't been asked by a single person. And most teachers, I think, in most buildings will I'll buy the first kid that asks me. I'll get you one of those. No, I already sold it. Somebody already asked me for that one. But I think a lot of it is just the willingness to get out there and ask. We really try to pump that up at that initial meeting and during, if you even think you want to go, come and find out about the options, because we do have enough opportunities where pretty much any kid can go. And then, at the end, we always, and, some of you are sitting at that table, give generously to help kids go just out of your own pockets. So I'll typically send something out via email to all of our CS and say, hey, if you're interested in helping a kid go to DC, I can tell you we have one teacher at school that pays for a kid to go every year. Just says, I'm going to pay for so-and-so to go. And there are lots of folks in the district that contribute to help kids go along that program. So the kids that are working and want to go, we find ways to get them there.
And for those students who choose not to go, they, for some reason, do not wish to go, what kind of provisions do we make back here for them?
They go through their normal school day. They'll do their normal school thing. What typically happens is we fold in, so I'm going to be gone to DC with that crew, but I'm also pulling out half to 3/4 of a class. So by me being gone, I'm going to leave a dozen kids back in period 1, but I'm also emptying another teacher's class of a dozen of those kids. So what we kind of do is combine those classes with the other teachers that are still around and kind of do more project-based. We've had, kind of varies year to year depending on who can cover and where. Sam Thomas has come in, and he used to teach science, so he had a whole project. At Dennis, our last day of school, we're so close, we walk to the municipal pool. And so he had all the science kids that were left. They did a big project where they had to build a boat, and then when we were at the pool, they carried these cardboard boats down and had boat races. So it kind of varies depending on who's available and who can do the coverage.
One of the things that we had talked about when this was first presented to us was, what are some of the reasons why some students choose not to go?
I think it varies. Some of them are too cool. They're just, no, I'm not going to DC with my teacher. That's lame. Some of them are just, it's not their thing. I think some of them are kind of that mindset, well, we can't afford it. I can't come up with that kind of money. I'm not going. I've had kids tell me that. You know, and I really encourage them. You got to if you get out there and try, we can make it happen for you. So I would say those are the two things, and some of them are just don't have the interest, or they'll say, oh, I've been to DC 3 times before. So it's a pretty variety of reasons why.
Because obviously the board...
Or just nervous, you know. Some of them
sure,
are, I'm not leaving home
I'm
for
sure
4
you
days.
would too. We would like to see all the kids go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So-
Well, let me rephrase that. I would like to see all the kids that qualify for what, with our standards that we've set. Yeah. Because that is a big jump. And I will say, here's what the other thing I'll say is there are numerous kids, there are a number of kids who probably would get in a fair amount more trouble, disciplinary issues, had they not had that carrot hanging out there. And it doesn't work for everybody, but it is an effective deterrent. When you say, you know, if you're acting like this in the classroom, I wouldn't take you out to the mall. I'm not going to take you 600 miles away. You got to get this. You got to get it under control if you want to do this trip. There are a number of kids who have started out pretty rocky and have actually kept it together because that's kind of their goal, that they wanted to be able to go on that trip.
Do you do any kind of Skyping or anything like that while you're gone?
Not yet. We're still working through those technology things. I'm sure there are kids that do Skyping. For the last 2 years, when I took the trip over, it was a no cell phone trip, or we babysat your cell phones and passed out cell phones for an hour because of all of the obvious issues that can arise. And I was on one of those trips, and I'm looking around, and we've collected all these teachers' cell phones, or all these students' cell phones, and half the teachers are going. You know, cell phones are not just cell phones anymore. They're cameras. They're all of that stuff. So for the last 2 years, we've established that you may use your cell phone. You're responsible. We talk about what it is to use cell phones responsibly, that you're not listening to headphones and doing this while the tour guide is talking to us. And as long as you're using it responsibly, you may have your cell phone. If you're not using it responsibly, we'll hold on to that cell phone for you until you get back. So there's lots of Facebooking. I can tell you that there are pictures and Instagram and Facebook constantly on that trip. I mean,
Well, I was just thinking that with 7th graders, maybe that would be a way to
yeah.
ease their minds and maybe generate some enthusiasm and, maybe to
that is a good idea.
help those students that
Skype from the beach and
have a
play
fear,
up the
the trip or
a little
maybe
bit,
just videotaping and at least bringing that back.
Yeah, and we
Share
do
with the
we do
future.
bring back pictures and videos. But yeah, that's a good idea.
Anybody have any questions or comments, or?
Well, I'm one that I would like to, it would be nice if we could just say all kids have to go. I really, because one of my concern is I don't think finances may be the only reason why they choose not to go. Some kids don't have the experience to know what they're missing, and it's pretty significant where they're going and what they're going to see. So, yeah, they don't. If they don't know what they're missing, then why would they want to go? So, I'm one of those that thinks that this is really curriculum based. This is historical. This is, every child should have this experience.
Make the motion. I'll take them all.
And and that's one of the questions I had. That now that you've opened it up for other participants. It's $566 if you have 50 participants per bus. Does that number drop any?
That is the low end of it.
And that's going to be the low end because it goes by how many students you have on the bus.
Yeah, and it's based on per bus. So then when you get to 2 buses, it kind of resets for that second bus and the third bus. We had,
right.
I want to say a couple years ago, we had enough. We had over 100. So we couldn't all fit on 3 buses. So we made it right to the 600 range. And that's, you can see, I think in the report you got, it shows kind of the breakdown for the numbers. So we ask everybody to fundraise or pay 600. And so that means I got to really beat the bushes if we've got low numbers. I really got to encourage people to get going and
But that number is then strictly driven by the bus. There's not another level from
correct
from any of the other.
Yeah, it's basically how many seats you got on the bus, and then it's 4 per room. So, I mean, unless we can convince some Hampton Inn to install bunk beds or something. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't other options. If we were looking at a thing where we wanted to get everybody, we could investigate other alternatives. Maybe I don't know what else. If there were, when I took the trip over is when we started going to the beach, and when I first looked at that, there was a dormitory style place on the beach. We considered staying there for one night. One of the biggest hassles when you do this trip is the whole pack up and unpack and pack again and unpack. So we've basically eliminated that by we do one all-nighter on the bus, and then we go all day the next day, and then that evening we drive back from the beach another 2.5, 3 hours, and we park it in one. So we're in one hotel the whole time, so we don't have to unpack and pack. So they bring sort of a set of clothes, and that's the one time where we're trudging bags in and out. But there are I would guess with some research we could probably find some dormitory style things out there somewhere.
But it's not going to be reduced significantly below that then. So.
You're still going to, yeah, because you would still have all your, you're still going to have to take that many buses and the gas and all that. Honestly, I'm really surprised that we got this price again. This is the 3rd or 4th year in a row where the price has stayed steady despite gas prices and everything else continuing to move.
Well, just educating the students, they may not know what they're missing, so
well,
and let them know.
And I will say, I know our social studies teachers really plug the trip and really plug in the trip as part of their curriculum. Do a lot of talking about, and this is one of the things you guys that are going to be going are going to be seeing, and really help me with that, plugging that trip. So
maybe bring a couple of the kids from last year in. Do you do that already?
We don't, because they're not in the building. So
yeah.
I mean, logistically, it's not easy. It's not impossible by any means, but yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I would recommend approval of this request, adjusted to include the students at Hibbard and at Test.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Kelly Baumgartner, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? I think we've already done that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Lots of luck.
Butter braids in a week and a half, let me know.
Okay, okay.
I'd rather have the $5 coupon, thank you.
I'd rather have the butter braid. That sounds good.
Okay, moving on to consent items.
Our consent items tonight include the approval of minutes of our last meeting, also a recommendation by Human Resources. Is there an addendum tonight?
No.
There is no addendum. Recommendation to approve the memorandum of understanding with Earlham College. Recommendation for approval of Title I expenditure. Also a recommendation to approve the reports of the Third Grade Academy and of the Earlham Summer Academy. And we have people here representing those two programs. We might want to take those items separately. But those above items then for consent, I would recommend.
So do we need a motion to pull those items out?
If you would like to pull those, you can also simply invite them to make their report and go ahead and file the report that they've submitted in writing as part of the consent items.
Okay, so should I make a motion, have a motion before they come
Yes.
and do that?
Yes.
And then invite them? Okay, got this straight now. So, I need a motion, please, to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Jeff Slifer makes the motion, seconded by Kelly Baumgartner. Comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Mhm.
And now, we are ready for our guests.
For the Third Grade Academy, final report, we have our own Mrs. Phillips here from Fairview.
Does the screens come up so we can see the report as well?
Yes, we'll be bringing that up.
There it is.
Oh, wonderful. For those of you who don't know, I'm Kirsten Phillips. I had the privilege of running the Third Grade Academy as instructional director this year. And so Mr. Mills asked me to come and answer questions, take a look at what our academy is going to look like next year, and talk about some changes we made this year. So I brought a couple slides from our big presentation at the end, and so I'll go through some of those really quickly. But if you have any questions as we go through, please stop and ask as we're going through. On the first slide, you'll see we had 99 students enrolled, and 90 of those students attended. I guess I need to do this, right? There you go. 90 of the students attended. We had a 94% attendance rate, and that was the help of Good Shepherds going door to door for those who did not make door-to-door busing, knocking on the doors. And then I spent about an hour every day going and picking up kids to make sure that they were there, because we only had 20 days. And so that was something that was really important to us. And we had the highest average attendance rate for the last 6 years. Here's the representation of how many students came from each one of our elementary buildings and the locations that we used across the community this summer. Our program goals stayed the same, but our assessments changed, and this is probably where some questions may come. We wanted to increase the performance from the pre- and post-acuity standardized test by 50%. The statistic didn't change, but the assessment piece did. Acuity was new this year. In the past, it was a coach assessment that was created by Third Grade Academy, and we paid someone on the outside to grade it. It took about 5 days, like a day or two to give the assessment, and 5 days to get the results back. As a teacher, that's too long when I have 20 days. I need to know where my students are. So we went to the acuity test, which gave you instant feedback. I'm talking like an hour. So we gave the test, and the teachers could see the data instantly. Of course, the iRead 3 students who did not pass and qualified for retesting, we wanted all of those students to pass. And we wanted to increase the ability to write cohesive or organized text and conventions in writing by 1 to 2 points. We did use the iStep Plus rubric, but we changed our writing. Instead of just writing a friendly letter, we changed it to writing in response to reading. And so they actually read a story. We used the applied skills test from iStep, used that rubric, and then graded those. An outside source did grade those, and we used that for our writing prompt this year. The biggest goal, the most important goal, though, is that last one, that increase of positive attitude towards reading. Our students were struggling readers. They don't like to read, and so we tried to build that love of reading, and then everything else should fit in place if we get that love of reading back for them. Our instructional strategies, we had emphasis on direct, explicit, very intentional instructions, 5 hours a day on standards 1 through 3 for the reading. We used whole group instruction, guided reading, Individualized instruction. I know you hear about IEPs for special ed students, but we pretty much make an IEP for every single one of our students as they come in for the summer. We did have 2 reading interventionists come in that RCS provided that worked with those kids who failed the iRead and to work with them every day. We did make some curriculum changes. The coach reading, which was used for the assessment, was used in the classroom as a curriculum tool because it lends itself to I do, you do, we do, and so we use that as one of our resources. And we also introduced junior grade books. At Fairview, our instructional coach introduced that to our team, and we're really good at surface level comprehension, but we realized we need to go deeper beyond the text. And the junior grade books is similar to Socratic Seminar, and it lets you talk about a story, find the deeper meaning of the story over 2 or 3 days. And so we introduced that this summer as kind of like a pilot to see how well, and the teachers really were impressed with the kind of conversations they were having with these kids. Technology was huge. Thank you to Mr. Tidrow in the technology department. We had 3 laptops at every center, or at every site, and with that, we could do our acuity testing. We could also do something called RAS Kids, which is from learning A to Z, and that is a program that we're going to look into buying for the academy because of the benefits of engagement and at independent centers, when the students are reading and the teacher's working one-on-one, you want to make sure that that child is engaged, and you can actually listen to the child read. You can look for miscues, you can look for self-corrections, and you can look at their comprehension. So it was a computer-based program that we tried. We had a webinar. We had professional development for a full day from someone from learning A to Z, and it really paid off. Here are our results. You can see over the last 6 years the different statistics, and this year it's a little bit different because we did use different assessment. So in reading, we had an 18.4 average gain, which is 35% gain. And when you think about 18.4 points on an acuity test, and maybe Dr. Parker could help me with this, last year we did acuity every 9 weeks. And if I saw 10 to 20 points gain in my students over those 9 weeks, that was typical. That was pretty good. And we had an average gain of 18.4 points in 20 days. And so to me, looking at the specific standards, looking at that data very closely and making those one-on-one plans for those students helped with that 35% gain. Writing is still a need, and you can see it. I think it's been a need for the last couple of years. We only had 0.88 of a point in application and 6,500 points in conventions. And so we recognize that that is an area that we need to improve, we need to address. How are we going to better teach writing? So right now we're looking at different programs. What can we do for the summer? And do we need to change the writing back to all of the writing standards, or do we need to still focus on that writing in response to reading and just do a better job with a better program? So those are some things that we're looking at. There's our attendance. And then when you look at data, you have to be very careful because looking at this data, we had 35% growth, and it doesn't look very good on that scale, but compared to last year when we had 58% growth, those kids came in at 22% on their pretest. Our kids this year came in at 54%. So the explicit instruction that's going on in the RCS classrooms is working. It's showing that the kids were better prepared. We had fewer kids who qualified for the retesting. And so moving forward, the statistics are different, but I think that 35% growth with the kids where they were was still remarkable, and I think the staff did a really good job. The most important, though, the iRead 3, our task was to take, we had 57 actually retest out of the 61 who failed. 34 of those students passed, which is 60% of the students. 27 of those students had exemptions, which means they technically did not have to take the retest. We tried our hardest to get all of those students in during the summer to fill in those gaps, and 10 of those students actually passed the retest, which is 37%. 17 of the students with those exemptions did fail, but they will move on to fourth grade, and 6 third grade academy students did not pass, which are 11%, and those students were retained in third grade this year. Is that number still accurate, Dr.?
No, actually, I think there were 2 that were moved on.
Okay. So 4 retentions? Okay. I know some things change after the beginning of the year. So what does it all mean? 82% of our students believe they learned a lot during our full-day program. The 54% coming in versus the 22%, is something that you really need to look at when you look at data. And so that 35% of growth with the 54% pretest is huge, I think. I think the teachers did a really good job. We could always do better, but with what we did this year and all of the changes that we made, I was very proud of our students and our staff with the work that they put in. It's very commendable that 37% of our good cause exempt students passed and 88% of our students made gains on the iRead. Growth is typical or average for our program in writing, and we did change it in writing in response to reading, but I still think we need to look at how we can better our instruction in writing. And then how do we maintain that 94% attendance rate or even increase that during the summertime? So when you look at the big red, it's like, oh, we didn't make our goals. And so I think we have to look beyond the red. We have to look beyond the data. You have to be able to appreciate what you put in. You have to come and talk and sit with those kids that, day one of third grade academy and when they leave. It's looking past the red, knowing what's going on at RCS and what's going on at third grade academy and how we're making those improvements yearly. And we have lots of work to do, and I hope that our program eventually goes away, that all kids will be reading on grade level. But if we still have those students who are not meeting standards and who do fail, I hope that we have this opportunity to do the program again next year. And that is one of our goals, is to make sure that we are here to support those students who did not pass. Taking a look at the last 2 years, because that's the only data that we have right now for iRead. This year we had 61 qualify. The year prior we had 78. Last year 60%, well this year 60% of our students passed with 4 retention, so that number will change a little bit. The year before we had 53% passing rate with 13 retentions. So although that red was there, I think it's very evident that what we're doing in the classroom is working. We will continue to work on writing, and we want all of our students reading on grade levels. So what do we do to change for next year? And I hope that's where we can have the conversations of maybe piloting second grade students. I would like to see, if we do have some students who fail iRead, to continue that support with third grade academy, but almost like a development or an expansion of second grade, almost like a second grade academy for those kids who are on RTI, those kids who maybe score a specific star or acuity score at second grade. We can work on what that score, where that line is drawn, but then put them in our program and get them ready and prepare them for what third grade is going to be, because third grade is a huge milestone. You know how to read, and now you got to put it into action. And so those kids who are still struggling with phonemic awareness and phonics are not going to be able to make that comprehension connection if we don't have that in place. Those second grade teachers are more specific, even going down to first grade teachers, finding staff that focus on phonemic awareness on a daily basis and phonics on a daily basis. Teaching third grade, hopefully I don't have to teach a lot of phonemic awareness by then. Unfortunately, we are. And so maybe looking at going down and looking at second graders and developing a program for them. And so we've kind of talked about that with our group, and we're bringing it here tonight as maybe something that you might want to look into for next year and expanding the academy and how it's going to change. With your support and some community donors, and I know Mr. Ahaus was here a couple weeks ago and you received the report card and you had all the names of all the people who help. But with your support, our program is a success. And I personally want to thank all of you. I know lots of you came to different places. Mr. Tidrow for the technology, bringing technology in and only expanding it next year, I think, is where we need to go with the technology. And I know Ms. Baker's not here today, but it's not her job to answer my questions over acuity over the summer, but anytime I called her, she was right there to answer. So, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
Impressive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity as well.
I like the idea of you looking at second grade. I think we should have done that already, probably. So. Hopefully that thought keeps
continues
growing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have representatives. Dr. Weishart is here from Earlham College, and he's here to talk about the summer academy that Earlham sponsored, has done so for the past
4 years.
4 years. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Weishart.
Okay, thank you. And I'll have Keith and Ashley both come up. Keith was one of the, different hat now. Keith's an MAT grad, Master of Arts in Teaching from Earlham grad, cohort 6, right? Cohort 6, and he's one of the master teachers that worked with us this summer. And Ashley Stewart is one of our current MAT students, cohort 12, and she worked with some of the middle school students this summer as well. So 4 years ago, we needed a summer practicum experience for our MATs, and at that time, Richmond Community Schools didn't have a lot of opportunities for middle school students for summer enrichment summer opportunities. So we got together and came up with a program. We probably don't want middle school students to know this part of it. We really looked at Indiana standards before we developed this program, before we developed the curriculum. We don't tell them that, I don't think. Anything about standards, it's summer. But we did. We looked at the standards, and we looked especially at the verbs in the standard. What kind of critical thinking do middle school students need in order to meet 8th grade standards? And developed a project-based 2-week experience for middle school students that we think will really help them not only in Indiana standards, but in a lot of life skills as well. It's a 2-week experience, Monday through Thursday, and this past year, the past 2 years, it's been at Richmond High School. Before that, we had 2 sites at Dennis and Test. It was originally for rising 8th graders. We wanted to try to impact more students, so we opened it up to both 7th and 8th graders this year. The number's been fairly consistent, 50 to 60 students, which is nice. We'd love to have a few more students, but that's been a pretty good number. So the goals, what we really want the middle school students to get out of it is some real strong critical thinking kinds of skills. And we didn't originally think about leadership. You know, we call it the Earlham College Leadership Academy now because that's what the middle school kids named it. At the end of the first year, we said, okay, guys, we've had this really neat 2-week experience. What would you like to call it? What do you think we should call it in subsequent years? And they came up with Earlham College Leadership Academy. And we said, well, you sure you want leadership? We really didn't think we were doing that. Oh, yeah, we learned a lot about leadership. So we call it that, not because that was the specific goal of ours, but we learned from our students that was one of the goals that they got out of the experience. So a lot of critical thinking, a lot of project work, and a lot of work with habits of mind, which Keith and Ashley can talk about that more in a minute if they'd like to, if you have questions about it. Skills like persistence that we know that the students really need in schools, but don't always develop as well. And so every day we have a different habit of mind that we work on, and that's another real goal for the middle school students. And we help them develop critical thinking through a group project. So it's all collaborative. And this year it was more history-based. In previous years it's been more science and math-based. We can talk more about that in just a minute. And of course, our MATs get an awful lot out of it too. They get a chance to see master teachers like Keith lead large group sessions. The MATs also get a lot of planning and teaching experience by working with small groups of the middle school students to develop those projects. And they get to see firsthand how to infuse critical thinking in projects. That is something you can do well in projects and don't need to do always individually. So at the end of the 2 weeks, students have projects that are based on both primary and secondary documents, so they get a chance to do some research. That's an important element of the program. They present it to parents in the community. We can talk more about some of the projects maybe in a minute. They were really pretty cool this year. We do some assessment with the students, and we do some assessment at the end of the program, and those are always really, really nice, and we get really good feedback from the students and their parents. But we also meet with the middle school students again in the fall because, you know, if they do really well at the end of the 2 weeks, that's great, but we want those kinds of skills to carry on into the school year. So we wait until October, sometimes November, and then have a follow-up meeting with the middle school students to make sure that some of those skills that they learned during the summer, they've still been using and been applying during the school year to help them achieve in school as well, and that's been pretty successful as well. And of course, our MATs get a chance to see theory and practice, the theory that they've been learning during the summer and how that looks like in practice, because it isn't always the same as it is in the books. So you guys have anything you want to say before we take some questions?
I guess what I would say is a lot of times when we're in this 2 weeks and it's much more campy than schooly. We bring in, I don't know, we bring in somebody that does a lot of challenge education. So they spend an hour every day outside doing sort of that. I think is where the kids get that leadership mindset, because they really push themselves to work as a team, to expand their own kind of preconceived notions of what people should be doing and who they are and what their fears are, and exploring a lot of that stuff. But in the middle of all of that, you're kind of going, are they really getting it? I mean, what kind of critical thinking skills is really going in? Because they're running around and chasing each other, and they're having a good time, which is important to us, because if it feels like another boring day at school, they don't really want to be there, and they're there by choice. It's not something they have to do. So we really make an effort to make it different than school.
Which is not usually boring.
Right, which isn't usually boring. But what I guess what I would say is this year I kind of had that aha moment, because a lot of these kids are students they're incoming 6th and 7th, they're coming out of 6th and 7th going into 7th and 8th. So I had a number of these kids that I worked with during the summer were now new students in my science classroom. And our science class curriculum is very group work oriented. We do a lot of group work. And one student in particular was really getting frustrated with her group. And she said, "Can I just do this by myself?" And I said, "No, I really want you to try to work with these guys and get them going." And she's with a couple of guys, and they're being goofy, and she was just getting frustrated. She wanted to get it done. I said, "Really try to work." And at the end of the class, we were leaving, and I have a student teacher who's also involved in this, and she says, "You know what, I'm really glad you guys picked me," which I didn't pick her, by the way, but she said, "I'm really glad you picked me for that Leadership Academy, because when those guys were getting on my nerves, I wanted to just go off on them. But I thought about that stuff we did in the academy, and we made it all right. We got them going." And I said, I got to get it. I said, "You got to send an email to Randy." But that was one of those things where you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. Those little moments that keep you going. But I would say that's what I think is the value there, is those little windows into those kids are really using that stuff. And then their final day presentations are really fun and creative. Their parents come in and they watch. So we have a couple lecture halls over at Earlham where they come for their final day, and they spend the whole day working on it and do all kinds of skits and mock-ups, and some of them do PowerPoints. And they really have the freedom to choose where they go with that, and it's really fun to see where they end up. So that's what I would say about it.
Looking at these pictures makes me smile, because I just thoroughly enjoyed those 2 weeks so much, and I enjoyed working with those students. But I would say the thing that definitely carries with me to this day is how much a lot of the students grew throughout the process. My group in particular chose to do their research over Richmond history, which is cool. So I had a few of the students research Susan B. Anthony and her influence in the area.
Tell them how they jumped at that topic.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So we were sitting in a circle and just discussing, what are you guys interested in? And a lot of them were shouting out different things that they really were interested in the area. And so we decided to break them off into small groups within our 7-group little pod that we had. And like I said, one group decided to research Susan B. Anthony, another group decided to research Levi Coffin, and the last group really wanted to focus on the music in the area, so jazz especially. And they were all just so passionate about this. And I saw, from that day forward, I saw this fire in them that just, it was lit up for the rest of the program until the day when they presented. And especially, I'd like to emphasize the critical thinking, because a lot of the students, I don't think before the program had been exposed to much abstract thinking. And one of the activities that my group decided to do was to have the students represent something that they had researched on a big poster board, but without using words. And this was something that was just way out in the woods for them. They're like, what do we do? What? But ended up being a very, very worthwhile activity, and they all really enjoyed it. And like I said, they can carry a lot of the skills they learn from this, they can carry with them throughout high school and forward. Another thing that I really enjoyed was how much fun the students had and I had. The Challenge Ed activities were really, really fun. And like I said, a lot of the students who were more quiet and reserved towards the beginning of the program, towards the end of it, they were taking hold of everything in the Challenge Ed activities. So yeah, it was a really great experience for myself and for all of the students as well.
I got to qualify her story, though, as a Richmond kid. So their challenge, their overarching project was to bust some sort of a myth. It was a Mythbusters idea. So they did, their whole thing about Richmond was the myth that they wanted to bust was that Richmond was boring and there was nothing to do. And it was impressive to watch 7 middle school kids just fired up about all this cool stuff that they didn't have any idea that happened in Richmond, and it was really neat to see them just that excited about this, and their little presentation was great. I mean, they acted out, one of them acted out being Louis Armstrong, and with the jazz connection. It was just really neat to see them excited about Richmond, because young people are not always excited about Richmond because everybody wants to get out of Richmond. All right. But that was the big thing for me about it.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
What are your plans for next year?
Hopefully to get more students involved.
Okay.
That's really the biggest thing. We'll probably flip back to a science math model. We thought since we involve 7th and 8th graders, we'll flip every year. 1 year more of a social studies, literature emphasis, and the other year more of a science math.
And would you plan to have it again at the high school or at the 2 different campuses?
We sort of like having it in one place, so if Ray's okay with it, we like having it at the high school. It makes it easier on resources, but we could do either way.
Some other benefits to that, too.
Sure.
Familiarity with the high school.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that kids say too after a week of sort of, because we eat with the lunch program. We have breakfast and lunch as part of that. So they're going. I mean, we're down in the wing near the library. They come in the front entrance. They're in that area, and then they go all the way to the cafeteria. So those kids are coming away with 2 weeks of being. I mean, they know the bottom floor of the high school, and I think they feel a little more confident about that as well.
Dixie?
Well, and I would just like to say this is sort of taking me back a few years to Hibbard, but certainly Randy's a wonderful person to lead this, because he was a great middle school teacher in our system and did some of these same things with kids when he was here. So it was fun.
It was, still is.
Well, and I would like to celebrate the partnership we have with Earlham College. This is an outstanding example of that partnership, and it's one of many initiatives that they've taken on to connect with high school and public schools, especially in Richmond. And thank you.
Glad to do it. It's our way of
Thank
giving
you.
back.
Thanks for sharing tonight. Okay, we are now ready for our work session.
A couple of weeks ago, the board members know about this, of course, but a couple of weeks ago I wrote some thoughts that reflected issues that are current, and I just thought it was important that I share some of my thinking with the board. And one of those thoughts had to do with where we're going in the use of technology in this corporation. when the board came back from the National School Boards Conference earlier this year, one of the passions they had was to explore some of the options that this corporation has as it pertains to technology, because they were certainly connected to a number of school districts across the country that are doing amazing things with technology and connecting students to places far beyond the classroom walls by use of technology. We attended many technology sessions, and at your places tonight, I want you to recognize that we have the book by Mr. or Dr. Edwards, and it's Every Child, Every Day. Jeff Slifer and I actually sat through a presentation of his. It's a best practices type publication, and what they've done, they've actually, in this school district, done a digital conversion to a point that Pearson has endorsed the project and helped them publish their procedure for the benefit of other districts across the country that may be interested. The board talked about this when they came back. They reflected on this when they came back. We also talked about it as the board was doing the goals for this year. So what we are doing tonight is not necessarily so much as revisiting my thoughts. We're revisiting the board's reaction to a lot of information received at the school boards conference, and also some thoughts that we're having as a school district as we're seeing some of the advantages of technology and putting that technology in the hands of kids. Keith Morey just tonight talked about how at one point we wanted to make sure they didn't have their cell phones with them or on or a part of their package as they're going about the trip. Now we're seeing some advantages to that and what they can do with those smartphones. So tonight what we're doing is to examine the vision that might be important as we look at the future of technology and what a digital conversion might look like. We'll be breaking into groups. Before we do so, I'll let the board president speak.
Well, I think that Dr. Borff, in his update, kind of laid out for us some thoughts about digital conversion. And even though we have had lots of informal conversations, we really have not, as a group, had formal conversations about technology and how we want to integrate that technology into our school corporation for all of our children. So I think that's what we want to do tonight. We want to get some thoughts and have a good conversation, and we know that we do have technology in our schools. It's just not as comprehensive as we would like for it to be.
And as we break into small groups, I want everybody who's part of these conversations to focus attention to the underlying principle of our board goals this year. And the underlying principle is to work towards the joy of teaching and learning. We have seen so many advances in where we started in, where I started in 2004. We've seen many advances in that time. But there is one area that we continue to struggle with, and that is relevance. We've talked about rigor, relevance, relationships, respect, responsibility. But the one R that we continue to have a problem with is relevance. If you take a look at why students leave school, there is almost without failure, there is a statement made, the curriculum just didn't mean anything to me. And you'll see that across years and across some of the students who choose to leave. One of the pieces that I think technology can do for us is to create some relevance in the classroom, in teaching, and I also think that it can lead, now this is just theorizing, I don't know that I can actually quantify this, but it makes sense to me that if we can create some relevance through the application of technology, we are going to see some teachers who enjoy making those connections with kids. We're going to see kids who are more engaged in their everyday learning, and ultimately we will start to see a better environment conducive to joy in teaching and learning. This is what we've heard through some of our different contacts. This is what I'd like to see. But when questioned, what's the vision, I'm not so sure we have a vision for what we mean by digital conversion, or moving from where we are today to a place where we are in that digital conversion. A suggestion has been that we call this a digital integration. Well, we are integrated right now. Right around the table, we have integrated technology. We've integrated technology. We have it back there with our television, our recording devices. We have it in the reporting of our grades, the reporting of all of our reports to the State Department. You name it, you name the area, and I can show you some technology integration. But conversion has to do with moving from a paper age into the digital age, and we aren't quite there yet. Maybe we won't be there for many years, but the vision has to be more than just putting machines in the hands of kids. What is our vision? Why are we looking at this? So one of the things that we're going to do when we break out, we have some samples of a couple vision statements, maybe a definition of technology and where we would like to go. I'd like to spend about 15 minutes. That's all we're going to spend. In 4 different groups, we're going to generate some concepts that we need to include as we're looking towards the future of technology and the digital conversion at Richmond Community Schools. And we'll report back. We'll just report out. I don't know, maybe we'll see a vision emerge, or maybe we'll have to take all the pieces that we gather tonight and work towards a vision statement that we bring back to the board. So Mrs. Morgeson has, in the past, when we've had these small groups, asked people to count off. Is that how you'd like to do tonight?
I think that would be great.
Okay. We'll start. We have 4 flip charts set up, so why don't we start here at the board table, and then we'll work our way out into the audience. Misty, you would be number 1.
1,
2,
3,
4.
2.
3.
4.
2. 3. 4.
Ron? 2.
This would be a good time to go to the bathroom.
1, 2, 3. Are we going to have our technology people back here?
I would like to.
do it.
Okay, 4.
That would be an exception.
And I don't know how many-
If I need to go to the restroom.
Group number 1 will sit over here. All number 1s jump up at once.
Ow.
The key is remembering your number.
Number 4, I only had to move over there.
What? Go way back here in the back
Oh,
40.
wait, no, they moved, I thought this was the diesel. I have to still move back there.
Now, this is,
yes. And it's Bob.
Maybe I should. I think I'm supposed to.
Those are threes. Sure.
Okay, you first have to have a writer. Okay. Make sure that you have somebody going to report out. We're going to start in about 1 minute after we have questions. Questions? I don't know.
I was just going to say Kathy's missing. I mean, Kathy and that guy. Suzanne's one.
I'm a one.
Oh, here we go. You're a four.
What that might entail in 10.
You're a third.
Let's see, you're
About so much more.
So your thoughts on the importance of integrating technology versus just every kid, everyone has.
everyone has differentiated instruction ability.
No, I haven't finished writing. I'll catch up to you.
Well, they're just statements that they have highlighted on this.
So this is more culture, important to have integration of technologies or culture, and just, is that awesome?
It's the 20% access to which is a collaboration
I'm listening.
have it to be efficient with technology.
Just don't write it.
I'm trying to juggle.
I guess I'm going to back up a little bit, because it seems as though there
Right now,
are
it's
some practicing that there's not a standard space.
There's no teacher accountability.
So before we jump into this big time, professional development, but there out need a plan for professional development. To me, that is.
That's where I get confused. I'm not sure you're talking standards.
That is to the success that I need to somehow, yes.
Correct. That's right.
And we also need to, I know that we have some kids that are at each level. We're ready to go probably way before they were. the technology, but we need to make sure that we are working round up with our teachers to get them. Because everything that I have heard, if you don't have the teachers on board for this, then it's going to be. So we need some kind of a way to get teachers involved.
Integrate the technology, but also how to into collaboration.
So do you think that's cool, but it doesn't, it's not more that people see other people having and what they're doing with technology, that is creating a.
Integrate technology and also write the curriculum for they're going to have a teacher book and it'll be
That is the truth.
A lot of kids are. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is how to be effective in an age where information is exactly. There was an NPR story about programming weapons. And how quickly the information media shifts. What our kids might do today is information back a year from now. This virtually works well to provide virtually access to
Exactly. So to me, that's why it's so important that we
have the 2020 vision. We need to realize that we're talking
ensure that we are.
Oh, I missed it, sorry, Ryan. I think I meant that I would decide on age-appropriate learning and technology, so that's what I intended. So you're saying age.
No, I have a group set of iPads, but I won't. And that's, we also need to differentiate our professional development, because there are people at all levels of education and challenge. So we need to make make sure that we're meeting our staff needs also by differentiating.
No internet. She said, yeah, my teacher is the science. Look up something and to watch the news that night and tell me what, talk about some stories. She said, the news was just sitting there. That's the first one I've heard in a very long time. So what's
We hear the same at the high school, but at least our building hours, you know, the library's open, there's always a lab open.
the difference is with the younger ones, when they're not as mobile and not as independent, what do you do? They're offering some opportunities, like, I know dentist hours, after school activity bus, so they could stay after, get things done, and then ride home with the late bus.
Because the vision that we have for the summer section is on here, so we're going to change that, because I think that's one of our digital cut from that next year as well. Actually,
And again, is that from the summer?
that's what it says, with reference to the work done positions and
That's, I mean, I don't, there's really nothing wrong with that, it's just. So.
I understand, and I think that's one of the areas that the person is very careful of not looking at schools as far as technologies, online instruction. Just being very intentional about what we're doing and how we're using it and how it actually enhances
Teachers saying, well, now I gotta look for ways to improve this.
you're going to have that.
Well, they're working.
And see, I'm asking for more resources out there, so I can know I'm doing it, where I can go along. And now I'm ready for that. We've had our still here, differentiation is right, and students still engaging. But now I'm ready to go away from finding professional development, but everybody's on a different level, so. Because I think that's really important. That is a 21st century skill, that to collaborate and have conversation. And I think some people think that this is emergencies that our kids are just going to be always training. So I think we need to fight this. I think we put
classes to be taken by.
Say once again, to me, it's like there's not an iPad.
Right.
It's how do you use it in the curriculum that you already are. How do you adjust See, I really like it. Are you available for slide? Got the iPads and I use basically like
And I read something where you, that's what we did last year. I was in a line tour, so I called the shops and, you know, all the places where people go to think they're, but yet they're in a social situation. And I think our library is converting them so that there can be, that can serve as a social.
just struggling. That's just not their generation. And I,
Oh, are you teachers? Yeah. I'm the only third grade. Grade level that I got. That's not well, I think one of the other things person, how can you make sure that students engage their partners and that they are knowledgeable and some parents have grown up with technology, but one haven't.
But I was as things would come up, people would use the devices and find information over there that
Not more than, probably less than a year ago, that would have been considered more attention to cheating.
and now there's an expectation.
It's like now you have this person here and part of that is that, and was it, I don't remember like it was, it said don't ask questions in class years ago. And I thought that was one of my ahas. I was like, oh my God. Wow, it makes so much sense. That's just something you don't need to do. And that's not the learning. The private conversation.
Okay, folks.
Oh, no.
Time's up.
Stop it.
Okay, folks. Wrap up your thought, and it's time to report. It's time to report out.
Do we go back?
No, we're going to report out here. Elliot, you're reporting
There are reporters in the back.
Let me. Okay, gang. I do appreciate your continuing to talk. We have to be listening to each
We
other.
continued and we got a really good response. But we continued.
We'll be good for that.
You'll like it.
Okay, group one is going to report out. Let's, group one is reporting out. Are you the reporter as well?
I don't think so. I think I would spell names. No, somebody else is gonna do it.
All right, some of the primary things, I'll say, you wrote, I'll talk. Some of the primary things that we looked at, important to have integration of technology as our culture, not just looking at it as something to do, but something that should be really embedded in our teaching and our learning and how we approach education as a whole. Emphasis on 21st century skills being important, even though they might not necessarily be something that's standards-based. If you happen to look at Partnership for 21st Century Skills, we see a lot about collaboration, creativity, communication, etc. That really goes strongly with technology conversion and integration. Deciding age-appropriate learning with technology, focusing on what's the best device for which grade levels and ages, focusing on what's the best way to integrate the items into the curriculum itself. Professional development for our teachers so that they know how not only to integrate the technology, but also how to write a curriculum that is technology enriched and can use that as a center stone for teaching and learning. Also, we're in an information age where there's a lot of information out there. Teaching our students to be efficient consumers of information through the use of technology is really critical, especially as information continues to change and people have greater access to a number of different things. Lastly, we also mentioned that we could have a challenge with access for the internet for all students at home, being able to carry over the technology from the school environment to the home environment.
Any questions for group one? Clarifying question? Okay. Group two. Elements of our vision.
All right, so we started out talking a little bit about some of the things that we have been doing with the use of Moodle and how that has already led to a big differentiation of instruction within the classroom. Having the technology allows teachers more options to differentiate the classroom, unlike traditional methods. Big emphasis on professional planning and development. We're still putting on a device in everybody's hands to use it. Make sure there's proper backup planning for that. Talked a little about making sure we get teacher buy-in, professional development, curriculum, making sure that again there's a curriculum in place that that the technology supports the curriculum, not drives the curriculum. Talked about how as successes, how teachers have gone from maybe using smartboards as fancy whiteboards to actually support the children. Of course, how accurate is the technology? Can we get it in everybody's hands? Talked a little bit about flipped classroom and how that could be a method that used to help bridge that divide between traditional and digital involvement. Getting parents involved, making sure parents are aware and making sure we gauge their comfort level as to what devices we put in their hands. Policy development, teaching kids how to properly use and use the device and use all that access they have, all that information they have, teaching them, obviously safe places to go and do that. And one of the last things we mentioned was the question was posed: how is technology, the current use of technology in the classroom, how is it allowed to change? What's the biggest advantage it has? I say that we can assignments can be relevant, they can be right now as to what's going on, because there is that instant access to the environment. So that could be a way to improve relevance in the classroom.
You're right, Linda, that's good.
Yes,
You did a nice job. Thank you.
Group 30. Now, by the time Group 3 is ready to present, we're starting to see some themes emerge. We approached our work in terms of putting together language that might be included in something like a vision statement. Just throwing out snippets that represent ideas that we might want to incorporate. So the first idea that came up was just connectivity, and you're going to see that reiterated later down here. We're talking about breaking down boundaries, about bringing people into a global setting. We looked at the language called technology bridge from the statement that was given to us and discussed some of the things that might mean. We talked about how, again, boundaries, it's going to come up again later, about how technology could be inclusive and immersive for students and teachers and families and communities, as we'll mention in a moment. That it enriches the curriculum rather than just sort of supplanting it. The relevance piece that Dr. Borf referred to in his opening comments might be addressed more significantly through this lens. We were talking about students being school, college, and career ready after moving through an educational system that is digitally converted. Global citizenship, virtual exploration, discovery, focus. Again, moving our students out of the geographic boundaries that they may have been born into and that many of us were born into, and they now have opportunities that supersede anything that was available to us when we were young. Breaking down barriers between entities in our community. The idea that students having access to networks is an issue of equity, and that students having access to digital technology is a question of equity. And how do we do that in fairness to all people in our school and community? It may allow us to raise expectations because students will have much more powerful tools available to them in the future than they've had in the past. And it enhances their ability to produce certain types of work. Enhancing human interaction and cooperation. Again, pieces of language that might be incorporated into a vision statement. And finally, Mr. Coddington was pursuing this idea throughout our conversation that if we're going to be members of a global community and if our students are going to learn to tap into that global community in ways that are much more powerful than just leafing through the encyclopedia as many of us used to do, then we need to be able to inform both ourselves and our students about the unique and the common elements of people that are tapped into these networks worldwide.
Any questions, thoughts, piggybacking on this?
Well, it was really interesting. We had 3 teachers stand up and talk, and appreciate their time. I asked Kristen to come by and stay, and so she was happy to come. Brandon Howard, I asked him, and Mr. Bailey as well. Means that that means something to us that they've taken the time.
And Corey Irwin is a teacher
Oh,
as well.
Corey, I'm sorry, Corey. You're always That's right.
No
Corey was here. I told you yesterday,
Yes,
right,
you did.
that it was going to be on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. So I appreciate that. It shows the interest level. And these are leaders in this area, but there are also people who take that expectation to another level, where and Mr. Landis and I spoke today about that you might have these younger teachers, you might have these people that are interested in technology, but they're also difficult to please as well because they have different expectations now. They're at this level, they want more and more, and they're going fast. And they're helping the other ones get there as well. Back to our point here, we talked about knocking down the 4 walls and expanding the horizon for the students. One of the examples I give is I asked a bunch of teachers that we had in the room once, what could we do as technology department to help them out? And they said, giving us access to YouTube, this was a few years ago, helped them so much because if they get on a topic, and Dave Murray from Dennis said, I was talking about a pond one day, and some kids didn't know what a pond was. So right away, he was able to go shift his curriculum right there, go in there and show what a pond was. And you heard Mr. Morey today talk about how they can expand the horizons of the kids with some technology. Tool, it's just a tool. It's not the end of what you're going after. It helps you develop those strong relationships, the global citizenship, create some teams. You have a group goal. Mrs. Hiley talked about that. Dr. Parker talked about how with the technology or because of the technology or as we move along in this world, education has changed. All knowledge is available right now. All known knowledge is available right now at your fingertips. Knowledge is going to change. If you were here this summer, Will Richardson talked about in 2018, all of our knowledge is going to double in size, but we'll have access to that. So what can we do to learn how to access that and become critical thinkers with the technology or with that realm? Also, if I had a smartboard here, you could read this.
I told him he could say whatever he wanted.
Let me read this. So the conversion process, will this really revolutionize teaching? And yeah, I think it will. I think we really go about it the right way, and in a good way, to benefit the students, not just benefit us as adults. Key, provide that teacher access early. We've seen that with a lot of our iPad installations right now, or laptops or so forth. Give those teachers those tools early, whether it's a month, whether it's 6 months or whatever. Let them use those things, get comfortable before you throw away another 20 in the classroom or 400 in a building. Make sure that they're ready for that, and we can do that now. Get our teachers ready for that. It increases engagement, which whether it's a social engagement, team building, or going after project-based or problem-based learning. I know Brandon does this in his classroom. Hey, we've got a problem here, guys. Let's go after this using our CAD tools. We have to look at the obsolete part of it. You know, the tool becomes obsolete real quick. You drive it off the lot, it's obsolete. But how can we keep it current with the information that's out there? And we have the same thing with our textbooks. They come off the printing press. Some of the things are inaccurate, but how can we keep that information current? I put a term up here called, we all know the one-to-one. We've talked about that for a couple of years now. There's a new term out there now. It's 1 to X, where every child has X, and X is what they need for that particular time. They might need a full computer when they go into the CAD shop, but they might need an iPad when they're doing something in the classroom. They might need an iPad or some other mobile device to do acuity testing in the classroom so that they can get that done and then go on with the lessons. That's sort of important. So that's what we came up. Not a real good vision statement, but it's some ideas that we've thrown out there and talked about. So.
Well, I think it's interesting. As in almost every conversation that we've had, we've gone well beyond the visioning. We've gone into a lot of detail that's necessary to get to a vision, and I think that's a good thing. We're already moving well beyond our vision, but we do have to articulate the vision, and that's what we'll be doing. I don't know that one's emerged, but I've certainly heard some themes.
We mentioned we like what you highlighted.
What you wrote. That's what you and I and Linda did. So,
That's why you like
that's
it.
why you like
That's
it.
why you like it. Ah, I see.
That was
Thank
during
you,
the
Jeff.
board meeting.
I thought it was pretty good, too.
What we'll do, we will record the items that were written on these flip charts, and incorporate that into a single document, and then before the next board meeting, there will be some brainstorming going on to articulate some vision statements that will try to incorporate some common strands of thought that went on here tonight. But one of the things that I would like for Rob to do, are you prepared to show them the Gantt chart of what would be necessary if we were wanting to have a rollout of a digital conversion? Let's say, I don't know what the future is. What would you talk about? Why don't you pull it up?
So part of our research into looking at different schools, we've been to Plymouth, we've been to different places, Indianapolis, Avon, Mechanical, and so forth. And we've also researched using the Every Child, Every Day book that Dr. Borff had alluded to. A lot of this stuff requires a plan. It requires an approach that you're just not going at it, from your hip. There's an organization called Project Red. It's projectred.org that has analyzed a lot of this and done research on how to best incorporate either one-to-one or digital learning or mobile devices into the classroom. And one of the resources available is this Gantt chart or project plan. And it's very detailed. We have, I think it has over 1,000 tasks related to it, to that. So 1,500.
Really?
So.
Go right back to where you were.
Okay.
Notice.
Yes.
This is a huge chart designed to take you from where you are to where you want to go. But notice what the first piece is. Develop a shared vision, mission, and strategic plan for the district. That's what we've been working on tonight. This is where we need to be going. We have many pieces in place here in this district. And what I'm wanting to show is this is not an easy task. There are many pieces. It's multi-level. It's chronological as well, and it's going to take a manager in technology to help us move through this if we're going there. But the first step is to develop a shared vision and mission. And I want to celebrate the board for wanting to go through that step here tonight in this format where it is shared. And because what we're coming from is a variety of viewpoints and perspectives. But I also want to emphasize this is not going to be just a finger snap away. It's going to take months and months and months if we plan to go forward with it. and multi-level at the same time. And a lot of simultaneous movement has to occur as we're going forward. So, no, we're not going to go through all the Gantt charts tonight. But there is one to guide our thinking. This is best practice, and there is something here to help us move through the process. We're not reinventing the wheel, in other words. We're making it specific. Our task has to be specific to the learners of Richmond Community Schools, but there are some best practices that we can use as we move forward. Questions from the group?
It's not a question, it's just a thought as I was listening to everyone. I was trying to think about, I just love this book. I picked it up because I saw it written in some corner of a board somewhere, and I thought, oh, shame. And it's a wonderful book, and the thing that I love about it is that it combines pretty much all the things that I think are important about teaching and learning. And I thought it was going to just be all techy, and it isn't at all. But the one thing I was thinking from what, and I haven't finished it yet, but I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. One of the things that I think was mentioned that I didn't see come up in the groups was the potential to add individualized rigor, because every person is reaching for that next highest place, whatever that is for them, and so they're really adding rigor into it. It has the potential to add rigor for each child, no matter where they are.
Very, very personal. Okay, Linda, anything else you would like to
Well,
cover?
you know, every time we do group work like this, it's just a wonderful experience, and we learn, or I feel like as a board member, I learn so much, especially when we have our practitioners with us that are living this and doing this each and every day. So I really appreciate all of your input, and we will certainly be calling on you more, I'm sure, but taking the time to come tonight.
I'd like to add one comment for future consideration, and that is that I can see from the chart that identifying key stakeholders is a part of the early process that we're going through. And we're not yet in the presence of all the key stakeholders. And moving forward, we might just want to start thinking about who those people are and how we might get them here as well.
We have that on our list, both parents.
You might, I mean, all of us need to know that we have in our midst somebody who's an expert on at least part of the process. Master's thesis was on digital conversion, or one-to-one initiatives, and how to go about doing that. It's going to be part of our text as we move forward.
Yeah, but this Gantt chart totally smokes me. I should have just got the download and submitted that to Barbie. Man, oh man.
Now, this just it does the detail. Okay, there's a second part to this, and it does not involve all the spectators at the board meeting. It involves just the board. So anyone else? This part's over here. Next part is the ISBA.
Thank you very much for thinking of it. Thank you. Good presentation.
I will. You leaving? Yeah, he said we could leave.
Is that what it is?
Sorry.
Oh, wait a minute, let me separate myself.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not my idea.
This is board conversation.
Are we done?
I mean, feel free to stay.
I don't think so.
What time?
You okay?
Every time we do these, I just,
This is good.
I mean, it's just always so good.
Are you sure he was talking to us?
Oh,
Are
tomorrow.
you serious?
Thursday night when Glenda Ritz is speaking at Boys and Girls. I don't know.
No, it's Tom Green, Dale Harris.
Rob.
Glenda Ritz is going to do something.
Yeah. He was saying that really his teaching
I
has
did
been
read that. That's
already revolutionized because he doesn't stand up and lecture anymore. It's all
He is one of the best practitioners that you were talking
So Thursday
about.
nights at Tom.
Could we find people within the district there?
He's a smart
I just haven't
teacher.
figured it out.
Phenomenal to watch.
He does a really good job of not answering
Sounds
any
like.
questions.
Yes, because I can't see. This
Okay.
is the third.
Do we have?
These.
We lost some of our audience.
Because they went home to watch NCIS.
You told
We
them
know
it
where
wasn't-
your mind is,
You told them
Dixie.
it wasn't for them, so they left.
That's what a DVR is for. You just record it.
A what? A what?
Oh, what? Here we are in our technology.
I record I record 5 football games at the time.
Okay. Okay, we are ready for the second part of our work session. And
I reduce them quite a bit.
we're going to talk about our takeaways from the ISBA conference that we attended. Was that just a week ago?
It was 2 weeks
2
ago.
weeks ago?
Wasn't it?
Would have had to have
Because
been,
we had a
just
board
getting-
meeting.
Yeah, we did,
We
and
didn't
so
have a
now
takeaway,
to
did
try
we,
to go
Suzanne?
back and wrap my head
Uh-huh.
around what we did 2 weeks ago.
Well, I can say we kind of jump-started some of that because tonight's
Supported
conversation had to do with one of the
One of the biggies.
important conferences or sessions of the conference.
That was probably, we always go to the NSBA conferences and the ISBA conferences and get all excited about talking about technology, and it's not going to go away. It's not a question of should we do one-to-one, it's when we need to move towards it. It's not going to go backwards, it's going to go forwards. I really liked Rod, his 1-to-X instead of 1-to-1. That makes so much sense.
I like that, too.
Yeah, so.
Well, and the Brandon that was in our group, you know, he talked about, I think the question that was posed to him was, you know, what do you think is the most powerful thing about utilizing technology? And he said the differentiation of instruction that he is able to do within his classroom. Now, you know, that has probably been, at least for me as an educator, differentiating instruction in a classroom of 20 or more students. I know that I have read before where it said if 20 patients all at one time embarked upon a doctor's office, how would he provide differentiated medical assistance to each one of those people, like at the same time? Well, you know, that's almost impossible. Well, in the classroom, it's very difficult to provide that differentiated instruction too, but obviously technology is a way to make that happen and make it happen so that all learners are engaged and learning at their particular level. So I think that's exciting. So, Dixie's ready, I can tell. You know?
Well, that was the first thing on my list.
You typed out notes?
No,
For
but
you.
that was one of the first things, was the digital learning initiative that we went to, because I think most of us went to that session and was so impressed with their plan and talked about that that's our next step, is having the vision, the mission, and the plan, the strategic plan, which I saw in the back of this book when I was leafing through it. So that was one of the things. And something else that I was impressed with was in the 21st Century Skills and Strategies was their test talks. getting kids to, basically getting kids to be responsible and own their learning and the results of their learning. And they had practically everybody in the school system involved in these talks about owning your learning and owning the results of your learning. So I really like that. I like the format of it. One of the other things was, another one that we went to was Rising Them Above the Mark, and I did have that. I think sometimes maybe we need to talk about the amount of testing in our system. Are we overloading it? Do we have enough, or do we need to back off a little bit? Are we usurping maybe some of the power we need at the end for ISTEP because we have so many other things leading up to it that ISTEP gets blown off because of test fatigue? So concerned about that, and that possibly it's leading to so much standardized testing is leading to conformity instead of divergent thinking. So that, and then another session I went to, and I heard the statement and it just stuck in my head that culture, good school culture precedes student achievement. And that stuck.
Good school culture. I like that.
Well, and I think several of the sessions that I went to, I know we're always talking about communication and, how do we better communicate with our parents and with our teachers and our staff. And one particular session that we went to, that several of us went to, a school system not too far from us, and they have done complete turnaround of their high school, and they have done that by improving their culture. Their teacher attendance has improved tremendously. They have just done lots of things to turn around a school that did not have the achievement that they wanted to have, and so they did this through lots of conversations, lots of surveys, lots of feedback, so that they could work on the problems. And one of the things that they said, if you really want to know what people are thinking, then ask them. And so I thought, well, that's pretty simple. I mean, how true? And so anyway, I think that gives us food for thought. And a lot of the sessions were geared toward college and career readiness. And that was an evolving theme, obviously. And I think that we're working on that particular part of, because we've had some really good discussions with our 5th graders and 10th graders, and we're going to do the 9th grade this next week, I believe. And so we're working on those pathways, but
I just want to interject. So when I was talking to the sophomores over at the high school, and I think Dr. Borf asked them about one-on-one learning at the intermediate level and everyone having their own iPad or whatever, and the one girl said, well, I don't think they should. We didn't have them, so I don't think they should have them. But what really struck me was that in both the sophomores that I talked to and the 5th graders was they really stressed, and they didn't use the word etiquette, but that you have to have limits and you have to limit access, and so I suppose we write policy, and then you put the guidelines to the policy, and those will be changing all the time because technology changes so fast.
Well, I think it was an article just recently, this week, Los Angeles had to learn the hard way. I think it was Los Angeles where there were 600,000 devices deployed among the student body, and they determined that they're being misused during class because the students are astute enough to have gone around some of the firewalls that were developed in the security procedures, so they've had to recall those. And one of the comments was, well, they should have done their homework because we're kids. We know about this. So that almost confirms what our sophomores were telling us the other day. If you go about putting devices in the hands, computing devices in the hands of students, you have to do the background work to make sure they use those as they're intended, especially during class.
Well, I think it's important to include the students, too, as we're doing all this research. And,
I think so, too.
I know, I can't remember which one it was, but I think we were all there where at the NSBA conference, the student actually led the meeting that I went to. She told how they used the computers in their schools, and she actually taught teachers to integrate it into their classrooms. And I just thought that kind of makes sense because it's such a natural fit for them because they grow up with it. So.
Well, we really should be at an advantage because there are so many school systems that have gone to one-to-one and that have and are experiencing many of the issues that
will benefit. Yes.
That we will benefit from learning from them, obviously. So that should be helpful when we go to do our policies and so forth. Do we have right now technology policies?
We do
We have some.
We do have. Some pertain to employees, some pertain to students. What we're doing is pulling those all together because they may have to be revised as we move through.
Well, the one that they have for the students bringing the devices to school, I don't think that we've got board policy on that. I think that's just regulation. I think that's just guidelines.
It could be guidelines. All that has to be brought together so that we can revise them in total together.
Is there anything that you want to share about the ISBA?
Well, yes, there is. I mentioned something at the last board meeting, and I don't need to go through that. It was really kind of an interesting common thread that went through the whole group. The hallway conversations during the presentations, the dinners, and that was concern about the future of public education. Mm-hmm. And I know we're not being broadcast, but I think it's important as this is recorded and played later for people to know that our board has initiated a conversation for tomorrow night's, after tomorrow night's program and dinner with Frank Bush, who is the executive director of the Indiana School Boards Association. And the question was made to him, how can boards take a more active role, or what can boards do to get their message across to the General Assembly and to the Governor's office that we are very concerned about the future of public education and what is being done in Indiana or not being done to support public education. And so Frank is saying it was too late to revise the agenda of the session tomorrow night. But he did say that what he'll do is invite board members and administrators to stay after, and he would be glad to talk with them and get a feeling for what's on their minds and maybe some suggestions. So, and he would not have done that had it not been for the Richmond School Board that wanted to have some time to talk to him.
Well, and I will say that in our proactiveness that we did write letters to our legislators and to other, I think we sent to colleges and universities in Indiana, and to let our concern be known about the A to F grading system, the accountability system. We have received correspondences from the governor's office and from Dick Ham and Tom Saunders. And they wrote to us telling us that they appreciated our concerns and that they were addressing those concerns and that hopefully there will be a solution to the A to F system soon. So I think that we should obviously let it be known that we did hear from them and we appreciated their responses.
We could post those responses under the board site if you would like.
I think that would be a fantastic idea.
Great.
We can do that.
I get anything else on ISBA? I just wanted to ask you, put you on the spot as to where we go next with, have you thought about where we go next with our technology?
One of the things that we've learned is that preliminary, almost before the project begins, teachers have to see this as not just an additional burden. They have to see this as something that will enhance their teaching, enrich their teaching. And one of the things that is suggested is that you get devices into the hands of teachers. And we have done that for almost 40, I think it's 45, almost half our teachers have devices already, iPads. And I have asked Mr. Tidrow if he would be prepared to make possible the purchase of devices for the rest of the staff, so they're all on the same page. They can all have these conversations. Vail, for example, has, among all the teachers, iPads. But if you go over to Charles, you won't find that to be the case. Fairview, I think, has, if not all the teachers, most of them have it. At the high school, you don't. And so it's wherever there's been an initiative, usually grant funded, we could, by Thanksgiving, put devices in the hands of all our teachers so that as we go through this conversation starting in late December or January, they already have those devices. What we're finding is you tell the teachers, take it home, simply experiment with it. Just have a good time getting to become familiar with it. What we're finding is that the learning curve is not as steep as you think, because they go out and explore on it. They work with apps. They bring those back. They talk to one another. You asked, when does the conversation happen then? Well, my experience is it happens in the halls. It happens during lunch. It happens after school, before school. They're excited about it. So it's not like you have to create opportunities for them to come together and talk. They do. They just talk. And they do have staff development sessions too, but they're all the richer because they've experimented. So the first step would be to get these devices into the hands of teachers. We can do that. We have the appropriation to do it. It's within the capital projects budget for this year. And my suggestion is that we go forward with that as a first step.
To provide each teacher with
Those who don't have anything right now, it's about 60% of a little over 55% of the
and
staff.
what would you provide to them? A laptop? Would you provide? I mean, the
iPad?
iPad?
We have provided iPads for all the staff members so far, and my suggestion is we maintain consistency. That's not to say that we will use iPads in the future at certain levels, but we can always take back those iPads. Let's say the high school decides that netbooks will be the way they would be going. We can always take the iPads and reassign those to students even at the primary level maybe. So nothing will go to waste. But in the meantime, between now and then, we have all the teachers engaging in the same conversation at home and at school on their own time. That would be my suggestion.
Does each school still have a technology
Yes.
consultant so they could assist for people who
Who don't know how to turn it on.
Professional development, yeah.
You know what, it really doesn't take a lot of staff development on that. I mean, it will be done in each building as it's been done so far, but what we're finding is they really take off on their own. Not suggesting that we don't need to structure staff development, but they become pretty excited about what they have.
Okay.
so you can have it in their hands by Thanksgiving.
What Rob Tidrow said, if we act fast, he can do that.
So are we going to do that?
Do we need to make a motion?
That would be my suggestion, that we, he has the appropriation in capital projects to do that kind of acquisition of equipment. And my suggestion is to endorse that, maybe even accept a motion to do that.
If it's already appropriated, you don't need the motion.
No, we really wouldn't,
Go
but it
for
wouldn't be a bad thing for the board to say.
Support.
Yeah, support it.
Well, and, I guess I'm thinking a next step also would be after that happens, how do we have conversation with our teachers? I mean, I'm just thinking about the rich conversation we had here tonight and how wonderful it would be to have, obviously, the people that were here tonight were very much on board with technology, have an understanding of it. They are using it in their classrooms each and every day, it sounded like to me. And so how do we have conversation with not only those people, but maybe those that are a little fearful of technology, or to just get to understand their thinking and to have a rich conversation.
Well, we have the essence of the conversation right now, because we've generated some key terms,
Right.
key thoughts. And like I said, at the next board meeting, we're bringing back to you a recommendation for a vision statement. In the meantime, we can move forward through technology itself and get some feedback from our staff on items that we've generated tonight. We could even do that by putting it out on the website and sending it to key communicators and see what we can get from the public as well.
Okay, so you want us to take action on providing our teachers with
A motion would be greatly appreciated to purchase computing devices for staff members at this point, faculty members who have not been included in that kind of program to date.
I so move.
Okay, motion made by Dixie Robinson, seconded by Kelly Baumgartner. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody from the public wish to speak?
I have been sitting here with one thought.
Come on down. Please identify yourself.
I'm Susie Hively, an interested public.
Not for long.
And I am, as I was sitting here thinking about teachers putting their hands on these computing devices, I hope that when they're passed out and everybody gets the ones out that they already have, that there is some vehicle for conversation that shares about how they would be used in the classroom. I mean, maybe this is being too simplistic and basic, but I think having that conversation focused on how they would be used in the classroom and making sure that it's intentional that way would be awesome.
I agree.
So I just didn't want to, I thought that's what you were all saying, but you didn't actually say it, so.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And it's nice to know that somebody's really paying attention at this time of the meeting. So you did a double there. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Not for me.
I don't know where my bell is, but we're adjourned.
Ding, ding, ding.
There would, thank you. Okay, so tomorrow evening, I'm a little fuzzy on what's happening here.
Dixie, are you willing to drive? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be picking people up from here?
Yeah.
And what time do we need to be here?
What time is it?
Well, we need 2 people to drive.
Probably.
Yes.
I'm going to drive separately, so.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah.
I may need to too, because I don't think I finish with my, I don't get out, depending when you have to leave.
And Jeff,
Okay.
are you
Well, it depends on the time.